New videos every day.
Life, wisdom. This is Psychetruth Correspondent Corrina Rachel. And today on the Truth Talks, I'm chatting with Dr. Vincent Bellonzi. And in this video, we are going to narrow it down to the 5 most unhealthy habits that we would recommend people avoid. So I want to thank you for joining me.
Pleasure to be here.
So I have been reading your book, Health Recklessly Abandoned, and there were 5 things that kind of stood out to me as maybe the most unhealthy habits and things that people do. The first one is sugar. Can you maybe just talk a little bit about sugar and the potential dangers that people should know about?
Yeah, it's interesting that this country consumes a lot of sugar, and some numbers go as high as 200 pounds per person per year. And the sugar producers didn't like those numbers, so they actually had them rework them. But no matter how they ran the numbers, they couldn't get lower than about 143 pounds per person per year. That's a lot of sugar.
Wow.
I'm not eating that much, so somebody's
That's
eating
almost
more.
my body weight in sugar.
That's a lot of sugar. And when I ask people if they're consuming sugar or carbohydrate, they'll say, "Oh, no, I don't use sugar." And they're just thinking what's in the sugar bowl. But you really have to consider, okay, what sauces are you using? What dressings are you using? How many drinks are you drinking that have sugar? Is there added sugar in your food? Are you eating a lot of grain products that are just flour? You have to total the whole thing up. You can't just say, well, I didn't put a spoon in the sugar bowl.
Right.
Sugar is very dangerous. It can be toxic if it's not under control in the body, and that's a problem. I don't know if you knew this, but they used to use sugar actually to kill bacteria.
Wow.
In dressings and bandages and things.
That's very interesting. And I think you bring up a great point, because even if you aren't adding sugar to your coffee or sugar to your tea, I mean, there's sugar in everything from white bread to barbecue sauce. Like you said, even salad dressings can often contain huge amounts of sugar.
And many restaurants add sugar to their food. Mm-hmm. They'll actually put sugar on the food so people want to eat more. Salt as well, but a lot of sugar is used. Some restaurants sugar everything. And that becomes a problem because you're not even aware of how much sugar you're eating.
Right. So what are maybe some of the dangers of sugar consumption, and especially eating too much sugar?
The biggest problem is called glycation. If you're not keeping a blood sugar level at a reasonable amount, and the studies show about 84 milligrams per deciliter, so you know your sugar fasting should be somewhere in that range. The problem is that as you go above 84, you've got excess sugar around. That excess sugar does a process called glycation. It actually reacts with the proteins and fats in your body, and it changes and damages your body. So once you've glycated some of these things, you start getting hardening of the arteries, you start getting other diseases caused by the sugar. In fact, cancer is known to be started with sugar, and many cancers are responsive to sugar. So you don't want to overdo it. You want to keep it under control. And it's very dangerous to have high blood sugar levels. You know what diabetes is. The diabetes is doing damage to many things and not allowing your body to do its normal operation.
Right. Okay, so before we move on to the next thing, I just want to see if you can maybe give us, what are some good alternatives to sugar? What are some good safe sweeteners that you might recommend for people who need to cut down on their sugar intake? Okay,
you mentioned sweeteners. I would really advise against the chemical sweeteners. You don't want chlorinated sugars and different types of chemicals. You want to eat something more natural. Stevia is not necessarily sugar. It gives a little sweet taste. That's one direction to go. But at least if you're using some natural things, maybe a natural agave, not the one from the root, but the one from the leaves. And you can use maybe honey or other sweeteners like that in moderation. The main thing, though, is for a source of carbohydrates, you really should be looking toward vegetables and somewhat toward fruits. If you're eating whole natural foods, the shock isn't going to be so much on your body. Your body will likely be able to handle it. And that's what we want to look at. We want to look at sources that give us what we need but don't hurt us.
Right. Okay, so let's move on to the next food, which is fats. And I thought that it was pretty interesting. We have definitely in our society really demonized fats.
Absolutely.
We hear a lot about the fat-free diet. We'll see the word fat-free. I mean, if you actually count the number of times you see the word fat-free in the grocery store, it's pretty ridiculous. But you actually have some really interesting information about fats, that they're actually something that we do need to be eating.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, most people see fat-free and they think, oh, it's going to be healthy, but it turns out to then just be sugar. And we go right back to the first thing we talked about. There are good fats and bad fats. If you alter a fat, if you alter any molecule, see, things are in 3D. We tend to think it's all drawn 2D on a piece of paper, but a molecule is 3-dimensional. And if I change anything in the configuration of the molecule, I'll get a different effect. So let's say I twist a fat molecule, and then I try to use it to build a cell membrane or something else in the body. It's not going to work very well. In fact, as the backbone of a hormone or something else, it's going to change the characteristics of even that hormone. So if I eat altered processed fats that have been altered, usually for the reason of preserving them or whatever, right? Trans fats will stay on the shelf longer. I've also changed what they're going to do in my body. My body has to have essential fats. You can't be healthy without them. And a lot of people avoid fats so much they become deficient in those. What you don't want is those processed fats that come in a lot of the baked goods and things, those trans fats that have been altered by heat or light or other processes.
Right. So the importance of natural oils
yes,
definitely
those
comes
essential
in.
fats you need if they're in the right configuration. And both omega-6s, omega-3s, omega-9s, there's different types based on their configuration. And you need them all. They're essential to life.
Right.
And they do so many good things in the body, but you have to make the right choice of the fats.
So what would be some sources of good fats, or maybe some cooking oils or something that you recommend?
You want a more stable oil that doesn't get altered as much. Olive oil is considered the most healthy oils out there, but we do have to be careful how much we heat it because it can also be altered and it's somewhat more dangerous. Things like macadamia nut oil, sometimes peanut oil, coconut oils tend to be a little more stable, so you can use them at higher heats cooking. Ideally, though, I'd have you cook with water and take in the fats in other ways. And then you've got fish oils, you've got a lot of nuts and seeds that provide oils. People probably know about flax oil, there's borage oil, there's black kern oil. So you can use these nut and seed oils as a very healthy source. You don't want them to be rancid, you have to eat them pretty fresh.
Right.
But that's where your essential fats are going to come from.
Okay,
Even
cool.
plants have some essential fats.
Great. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Now, in the book, you kind of lump grains and dairy together. Obviously, those are very different foods, but maybe you can just kind of share some of your concerns about grains and dairy.
Sure. They do have some similar functions in the body as far as negative functions. One thing is grains and then dairy products, casein, which is the solid in milk, can actually be turned into something like an opioid, like morphine. And grains already have something contained in them called gliadomorphin, especially some of the glutens that we worry about. So if you're eating grains, you're getting a little bit of a drug. And it can actually make it a little bit addictive, and it can change how your body functions. But also, some people can't handle the sugars in the milk, and especially the high sugar that's coming in the grain. And so there's a high calorie intake to worry about. And then a lot of people have an immune response. Many people actually react with their immune system to milk products and milk. And they're worse if they're not raw milks. You actually, again, configuration change from processing. And then the grains, you're going to get many times an allergic response. So if I'm eating food that triggers my immune system, I actually become more reactive to all kinds of things in the atmosphere, cedar, whatever, because my immune system has been kicked to a higher level.
Right.
But it can go the other way too. You eat less of those, you react less, everything gets better.
Right. So even something like allergies, for instance,
Absolutely. You can
people
have quite an impact on those either way.
That's very interesting because I know that a lot of people experience allergies, especially here in Austin. Mm-hmm. Oh, I've got allergies. But that's really interesting to think that actually your diet could be affecting your immune system in such a way that it's maybe making your allergies worse than they would regularly be. So as a general rule of thumb, maybe people need to see how they personally respond to grain products and dairy products. But in general, you'd recommend, back to our real food discussion, opting for the more natural versions of those foods, the least processed versions.
More natural, perhaps even avoiding them completely. Some people are going to do better in that situation. But the main thing is to get them, in their more natural state where they haven't been processed as much.
Right.
And then you can look at symptoms. Sometimes you can do something as simple as an elimination diet. Don't eat it. Ideally for about 3 months, but some people will eliminate for a week and go, I didn't feel anything. It takes longer than that.
Right.
But eliminate the food and then reintroduce it and see if you have symptoms. There's also quite a little bit of laboratory testing now. So we can test reactions to foods and then know what to avoid and know how to approach a strategy.
Right. Okay, so the next thing that I felt was a recurring theme within the book was stress. Now, of course, nobody likes to be stressed out. Nobody, I think maybe there are some people out there who kind of do get a high off of feeling stressed. But in general, stress is something that we don't want to have. We don't want to be stressed out. But I think people would actually be surprised to find all of the different health implications just involved with being stressed.
Absolutely. And a lot of times it's kind of that last straw effect. You're relatively unhealthy, you're stressed, and now you start having symptoms. So we often blame the stress when you really weren't doing that well to begin with, if that makes sense. And I don't look at stress as a bad thing. In fact, you'll never ever be free of stress. It's always going to be present. It's a force to be used for good or for bad. Now on the negative side, especially if you're not healthy or if you over apply stress, you're going to have problems and even do damage and have disease. We know that. We know stress leads to a lot of different diseases. It does damage the body in a way that may not even be repairable sometimes. But on the other hand, you can use stress for good things. Exercise is stress, and if you apply it correctly, you can get some benefits from it. So stress many times gets kind of a bad reputation, but it is damaging if you don't control it. And you do have to watch how much stress that you're applying. The term that's used now is called allostasis. So you don't think of necessarily homeostasis or stress by itself. You have to think of all the stresses and how the body reacts to them. And think about a time when stress didn't affect you as much. You were probably doing better as far as your health. And then maybe when you're a little sick, a little bit of stress and it puts you over the top. So you have to consider how much you can handle. But planning and understanding that, you can then redesign your life, set some priorities, do some things to reduce how much stress you're under, but also get your body healthy enough so you can handle more.
Right. And I think that's a very important thing for people to understand, is that certainly if your health is declining or is in a state that is your body's not being able to take care of itself and do all of its necessary functions, that alone is going to affect how your ability to handle stress and, whether or not it's going to make you sick. There have been times in my life where I get a cold or whatever, and I can really link it back to like how stressed out I was.
Absolutely.
And as you mentioned, it's not just the stress, but certainly stress can be the thing that pushes you over into.
You just have to reach the point where it's more than your body can handle, and then there you are.
Okay, so the fifth thing that I thought was really important that you mentioned in here is gut health and ensuring that your digestive system, your digestive tract is able to function properly. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what that means to someone and some tips that they can maybe apply in that area.
Sure. Well, if you're a functional medicine practitioner, you believe everything starts in the gut, and there's a lot to validate that. If you get the gut healthy, everything else tends to follow. First of all, you've got to be able to digest food. So let's say my gut is my stomach, my intestines, everything else. Think about how many people take proton pump inhibitors because they've got indigestion. Now, what do you think might be the major cause of indigestion?
Eating bad foods.
You nailed it on the head. Most of the time when people have indigestion, which we call reflux, it's because they made poor choices. And in a sense, their stomach's rejecting it. But the answer medically is to give you a proton pump inhibitor, something that's actually going to stop you from making acid.
Right. It's going to stop the natural response that your body is having.
Now, I have to have acid for two major reasons, and some minor ones. First of all, of course, if I don't have acid in my stomach, I can't digest my food. Then it's going to go bad in my intestines. I'm going to create a whole bunch of problems, even a toxemia type situation. I'm going to get toxic. The other thing that your stomach acid does is to protect you from organisms, from other things. You actually sterilize everything that comes in your mouth. So you eat a little bit of dirt or something like that. If you have stomach acid, you neutralize it right there in your stomach. But what if you don't? Then those organisms are going to gain entrance and populate your whole digestive tract, even get into your body and cause you disease. So if you take a proton pump inhibitor too much, you've affected that gut. The other thing is if I have a lot of inflammation in my gut, if I've done damage to it, I'm going to get to a situation where I have leaky gut, maybe too many things get in, or I might go the reverse and not even be able to absorb things. I can have either extreme. Well, if I'm not absorbing my nutrients, I'm going to have a real problem. Gut health relates to everything. It's also the largest organ of the immune system. Your immune system is in your gut. You also make neurotransmitters in your gut. People know about serotonin. There's more serotonin made in your gut than there ever will be made in your brain. And some of it is supplied from the gut.
Right.
So if I need more serotonin, I need gut health. I don't need a drug.
That is very interesting. So what are some things that are bad for our gut health? What are some things that are going to be disrupting our digestive health?
A lot of things chemical-wise out there. One of the big things that's just come up in some recent studies is chlorine. And think about the fact that we chlorinate almost all of our drinking water. There's a reason maybe to filter it back out, but they are finding a direct relationship between chlorine and damage to the gut, leading to that leaky gut syndrome. And there's a very good study was done showing direct relationship there. But a lot of the chemicals that you ingest start causing damage. High sugar can cause damage. Other foods that may not be well accepted can cause damage. You've got to keep the gut healthy. The biggest problem with a lot of people is they don't have good probiotics. There are commensal organisms, there are critters that live in your gut. And if you don't take care of them, they're not there to take care of you. They actually help you digest your food, they help you protect your gut, and they actually, most importantly, believe it or not, program your immune system. If the probiotics aren't there, your immune system goes off program. Basically, soon turns into autoimmunity. So a lot of things are going on related to the gut, and it's something that you really need to take care of. You need it.
Certainly, of course. You can't live without it. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I hope that answers some people's questions. I want to thank you guys for watching this video. If you'd like to learn more, I highly recommend that you check out Dr. Bellonzi's new book. It's called Health Recklessly Abandoned. You can find it in the link in the description or on Amazon or any of your favorite book retailers. I hope that you will leave a comment on this video. Let us know if it was helpful or if you have any questions for future videos. Be sure to like this video if you liked this video, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.